to deal with this threat of far-right extremism in this country. They're all on universal credit. Half their teeth are missing. They're just a bunch of gammons, and they're just a bunch of sabloys and whatever you want to call them. Yeah, the people that you see probably are.
If anyone comes into your face, remember, Muslims are not pacifists. If somebody comes into your face, you knock his teeth out.
I've got a shocking story for you today that once again goes to highlight the wokeness and the corruption of the British political system. Now, it's been reported that a former terrorist is running for a seat in Birmingham Council, and the report says convicted Yemen terrorist runs for Birmingham Council seat. Shahid Butt, 60, who served 5 years in a Yemeni prison for conspiring to bomb the British Consulate, an Anglican Church, and a Swiss hotel in 1999, announced his independent run for Birmingham Spark Hill ward ahead of May elections. So this is an anti-Christian terrorist, a jihad anti-Christian terrorist who tried to blow up a church. He tried to blow up a British Consulate and a hotel in 1999, and it was actually, just to go into the charges a little bit more deeper, there is an article about this, but I feel like this is a fizz-up. I feel like this is a positive marketing campaign, because the headline says this: convicted terrorist standing in Birmingham election to unite Spark Hill. But when you start reading it, it starts talking about his family, and it's trying to show him in a positive light and stuff. So I think this is actually a fizz-up. This article is actually a marketing campaign to try and get attention for this guy and to actually make him successful. But if we just look at the actual facts, Shahid Butt's criminal past is heavily overshadowed by a serious terrorism conviction in Yemen that raises significant concerns about his background. In August 1999, a Yemeni court convicted Shahid Butt, then 33, of terrorism-related offences as part of a group of mostly British Islamists accused of forming an armed gang to carry out terrorist attacks in the country. The charges centred on conspiracy to commit bombings and other violent acts, with prosecutors alleging the men were linked to radical cleric Abu Hamza al-Masri and have been sent to Yemen to target Western targets, including amid fallout from a high-profile kidnapping of tourists. Butt was sentenced to 5 years in prison, a penalty that reflects the gravity of the accusations. He served a full term and was released in December 2003, returning to the UK. He recently posted this video at a Palestine protest, and he was saying, "Muslims are not pacifists. If somebody comes into your face, you knock his teeth out." And here's what he had to say.
You need to be earning halal rizq, and you need to be in that gym, doing that MMA, doing that boxing, lifting those weights, strengthening yourselves up, so that if anyone comes into your face, remember, Muslims are not pacifists. If somebody comes into your face, you knock his teeth out. That's my message to the people.
If he has any teeth.
Now, this guy is trying to sort of portray himself in a positive light, and he spoke on a podcast recently speaking about when he was a child, and he said in the 1970s, when he was 11 years old, he was attacked by Nazi skinheads on the way to school, and this basically changed his perception of life, and essentially this is what forced him down the path of terrorism. Now, in this part of the interview, he talks about far-right extremism. Basically, anybody that's a patriot, he considered them as a far-right extremist, and he agrees with the sentiment that most patriot protesters are basically toothless, universal credit-claiming gammons.
We're always going to be a target. We can't change the color of our skin. We're not going to apostatize from our religion. So we're always going to be Muslim, and we're always going to be brown. So this is never going to go away. But for some reason, our community leaders, our so-called, politicians, our religious leaders, our business community, they all put their head in the sand. And rather than establishing something where we can at some point be strong enough to unite together to deal with this threat of far-right extremism in this country, we are not prepared for that. So what we have is somebody running this way, somebody running that way, and everybody doing their own kind of thing. This is not productive. Our resources are being split up. Our resources are being, we're being drained. This has been done by design.
Yeah.
Don't think for a minute. The audience watching this need to understand. You might, and I hear you all the time on social media, oh, they're just a bunch of lager louts. They're all on universal credit. Half their teeth are missing. They're just a bunch of gammons, and they're just a bunch of, sabloys and whatever you want to call them, yeah? The people that you see probably are on universal credit and got their teeth missing or whatever you want to say about them, yeah? But do you think that they're the people in power? The people behind them are highly educated, Oxford graduates, multi-billionaires, very, very astute, very, very strategic in what they're doing. This is just the cannon fodder that you're seeing. And you're focusing on the cannon fodder, but you're not focusing on the people behind them.
So this is what he thinks of British patriots. They're basically toothless, universal credit-claiming gammons and cannon fodder and far-right extremists is what he thinks they are. Now, this guy, he's kind of, he's 60 years old now, and he tries to sort of, as I say, portray himself in a positive light. But this is all just politics. This is what this guy wants to do. He wants to portray himself in a positive light for the people. But you can't forget what he's done in the past. He is a convicted terrorist that tries to blow up the British Consulate. He tried to blow up a church. He tried to blow up a hotel. This guy is anti-Christian. He's a Muslim, and this is what he stands for. And this is what he is about. And we're seeing this all over the UK at the moment. But the main reason for this is our government. Our government have actually allowed this to happen. They're actually importing terrorists back into the country from the ISIS camp in Syria at the moment. And I recently saw this headline on X as well, which says, breaking, UK government secretly returning ISIS brides from Syria. 3 adult women with 18 children have already been repatriated back to Britain by the Foreign Office. Labour are bringing terrorists back to the country. They are traitors. And this is the actual article itself. It says, Britain discreetly bringing back Islamic State brides from Syria. The so-called ISIS brides have been held in facilities run by the Kurdish-led Syrian Democrats, SDF, the same camps where Shamima Begum remains detained. So the political system that we're in at the moment, the British government, they've basically created a system that allows this to happen. They allow for ex-terrorists to get in positions of power in councils. They allow terrorists to be brought back to the UK. And my belief is they're actually going to bring Shamima back to the UK. That is my belief. That is what I think is going to happen. Shamima Begum actually recently, she put an appeal into the European Court of Human Rights on the 6th of January this year. This is pretty much why we are where we are today as a country, and we'll probably end up as an Islamic state because, our government just panders to the Islamists and does pretty much everything to make sure that the Islamists are looked after. Even Islamic terrorists, they're bringing them back into the UK. And, it's all down to political education at the end of the day. I think, when it comes to British citizens and patriots, etc., I don't believe there's enough political education being passed down to the younger generations. I think in order to change this around and bring Britain back to greatness, there needs to be a political education for the youngers and for the next generation. And I think it would take like 2 or 3 generations to actually turn it around. But if people start to educate their children and educate the youngers about this country, give them more political education and understand that it's all about numbers. The reason that so many councils in the UK are controlled by Muslims is because they all come together. They understand it's all about numbers. And if everybody votes, they can take control. There's too much division in the UK at the moment. I think there's too many different groups. We've got Reform UK, we've got Advance UK, we've got UTK. There's too many different groups, whereas the Muslims, they all stick together. They only have a couple of groups, and generally this is why they maintain power and gain control, because they all just vote for 1 or 2 different parties, whereas the UK, we're split up into too many different political parties. The country is just spread too thinly between too many different ideas and too many different people, and that's the problem. Just imagine if like Reform UK, Advance UK, UTK, all these different parties came together. This is how you could literally regain control of the country and bring Britain back to greatness. But until that division ends, and also when this lack of political education ends and people start to educate the next generation about politics and voting and how it actually works, that is the only way that we can turn this country around. But give me your thoughts in the comments what you think about this, guys, and particularly Shahid Butt, the convicted terrorist who is running for a seat in Birmingham Council, and the guy who thinks that all patriots are far-right extremists who have no teeth, claim universal credit, and are gammons.